I am now pleased to welcome on stage 3 female Republican House members. So please join me in welcoming Congresswoman Carol Miller. Congresswoman Miller, who represents West Virginia's 3rd Congressional District, is the only newly elected female Republican this past election cycle. She has previously served as the first female Majority Whip in West Virginia's House of Delegates. Congresswoman Miller serves on the Oversight and Government Reform and Transportation and Infrastructure Committees. Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez-Colon. Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon serves as a resident commissioner of Puerto Rico, the island's sole representative in Congress. She is the first woman to hold this position and advocates for her 3.2 million constituents, the largest constituency of any member of Congress. And Congresswoman Virginia Foxx. Ms. Foxx is a veteran leader on the Hill and in the House Republican Conference, having represented North Carolina in Congress since 2004. She currently serves as the senior Republican in the Education and Labor Committee, which she formerly chaired. Bob, back over to you.
Thanks for coming this morning. I do want to start with the freshman on the panel, Congresswoman Miller. And I asked the same question I asked everybody on the last panel. What has been the biggest surprise about coming to Washington and Capitol Hill, whether it's workload, travel, lifestyle, the press?
I might say the press.
The press.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I'm used to the lifestyle, more or less, having served in the legislature for 12 years, times 100 probably. I guess the focus on everything everyone does and says is so much greater up here than it is in the local state house. Lifestyles challenging. When one of the ladies said last time, you get home at 9:30 and it's just like boom, and then you get up the next morning. And I'm an early riser, so I wake up anytime after 4 a.m. and sometimes that's a short night.
The 2018 class is a very big class, but in the House Republicans, it's a class of 1. How has that been feeling? Were you surprised that you were the only Republican freshman elected?
Well,
Female, yes, female.
True, thank you, I am. I was disappointed because there were some really sharp women running this time and they just didn't make it. There was an incredible amount of money poured into races against women and Republican women. Yes, I am the only one. We've got a terrific group of guys, and Carol.
Congresswoman, you've been, were you elected in 2000? Okay, and what would your advice be to freshmen on both sides of the aisle? Because the Democratic freshmen were saying they've already formed some relationships with Republicans, and it's not as nasty as you'd think by watching on television.
I will say that, as Carol just said, my experience, I was Speaker of the House in Puerto Rico before coming to Congress. And I was for 14 years a state representative. So that gives you a little bit of, advantage in terms of forging those kind of alliances. And in my case, in the case of Puerto Rico, I can't vote on the floor. So that means I rely on people like Virginia and Carol and the rest of the members who actually can make things happen in Congress. And that's the importance of, educating members about what are the issues. And the same thing may apply to different districts. You just need, I don't know the exact things that are affecting Virginia's districts, but she will do that for, getting forward her initiatives. So we need to do that as members with every issue. And there's a lot of team effort in women's ideas. We got bipartisan efforts in that regard. And there's many different caucuses that actually focus on that bipartisan job.
I do want to ask you about Puerto Rico and disaster relief. Many have been very critical of the Trump administration. What does the administration need to do more, and how long? What is the status of Puerto Rico right now? What percentage has recovered?
And we can't talk about a percentage of recovery yet. It was the worst hurricane in our history in more than 120 years. So the devastation still ongoing in many areas. I will say that this is the biggest funds that we receive in our history as well. Congress approved more than $80 billion for recovery efforts in hurricanes areas. In the case of Puerto Rico, directly more than $50 billion in different areas. So never in our history, House, Senate, or the President has approved more money for that recovery effort. So I may say that this is the biggest recovery effort on the island. And now the main challenge we got is not about if the Congress or the President approved the money. They did. Now is having the federal agencies to cut a lot of the red tape to make things happening on the island, the disbursement in many areas. And of course, there's a lot of filing documents and processes that people may not be used to, but there's federal tax money that need to be, guarded, and that's the main challenge now.
Congresswoman Fox, most Republicans in the House have not served in the minority. You've served in the majority, been chairman. You've been able to assess, I think, the Republican conference, and are they used to the minority? Has it been a big adjustment? Have you been telling people this is the adjustment, this is what you have to do?
Well, it's a lot more fun to be in the majority.
Right.
What I have said to the members of my committee, I hope they're miserable in the minority so that they'll work hard to be back in the majority. The agendas are very different. And so most of us have very deep philosophical beliefs, and we like to see our philosophy be the focus of what we are doing. And we're not able to do that in the minority. However, we are able to offer motions to recommit.
Which you've won a couple.
Which we've won, and the Democrats have threatened to take away. They don't like losing at all. And so we do what we can do. Yesterday we had a markup on the Equal Pay Act. We offered 8 amendments to the bill. We didn't pass any of them, but we did offer them. So we're going to offer our policy efforts and hope that we can gain some support.
Congresswoman, what is the key to getting more Republicans on the House GOP side? Your colleague, Congresswoman Stefanik, has called this a crisis, both women and minorities.
Well, it's many women don't see a role for themselves in public policy. They much prefer to play their roles domestically and to make a difference. And I think it is important to have women in public office. I have supported that all my life. I was the first woman in my high school to be the president of the senior class. I never knew that till I did that. That was a long time ago. So I have always advocated for women getting involved. How we do it is going to depend year by year, time by time, place by place. I would like to see, money is always an issue for women running for office. I mean, we've been hearing about this, I think, since the 70s, like the year of the woman in 72, I believe. I remember that. So we do need to help encourage women. I was at a school board meeting as an observer in 1973, and somebody said, "Why don't you run for the school board?" The school board was being really incompetent that night. All men. And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not qualified." And he said, "You mean you're not as qualified as these turkeys are?" Well, I had my master's degree. I was teaching at Appalachian State. I had a child in school. I went home, said to my husband, "This person suggested I run for the school board." He said, "I think that's a great idea. You ought to do it." I lost the first time, but I won the second time. So I do think many women, I think we still have that issue of many women feeling I'm not qualified to do it. And yet they are. have the life experiences. And I think we have to sit down with women and explain to them why they would be good at what they're doing, at what they would be doing. We've known this for a long time. Men know they can learn on the job. Women think they have to know everything before they get into it. I believe we need lots of perspectives. We need geographic perspectives, different geographic perspectives, different philosophical perspectives, different gender perspectives. So I'm a big believer in the Republicans believing that we have a big tent.
Congresswoman Miller, you ran against a man who got a lot of national attention, but you ended up winning pretty easily. What are the obstacles for a female candidate on the campaign trail?
Well, first of all, I don't define myself by my gender. I just thought I was a human being with a lot to offer. And when the previous congressman had decided to run for another office, I had several people come up to me and ask me to run. They'd seen how I'd been in the legislature for 12 years, and they'd seen the way I operated. I happened to be someone that was very happy working behind the scenes, being more the mortar between the bricks than the one out there yelling and screaming. And so when I did have an opponent that was very vocal and loved the limelight and would get on Facebook every night and rant, we couldn't have been more polar opposites personality-wise. I used to teach the freshmen that God gave you 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth for a reason, and that you needed to listen to people, and you needed to read and comprehend the issues. So we just were totally different individuals running for office. I'm a mother and a grandmother and a wife of 45 years. I bring different skill sets to the table. That's what women do. We, relish in who you are and understand that what you have to offer is very beneficial. So does that answer you a little bit?
Yeah, that does. Congresswoman Gonzalez-Colon, what is your solution to recruiting more minorities, women? Many women who ran, not all, but because of President Trump, and that got them motivated. Does the president make it more difficult for recruiting efforts?
I think this is an issue that has been there for many, many years. In the case of Puerto Rico, we got more men in the elected position, although we are the majority of voters. In Puerto Rico, we were 56% women voting, and we got a majority in the House and the Senate, there are men. So this is the same thing across the nation. This is not just about one person. I think we should be opening doors for more women to run, and that's the way you live by example. Allowing other girls, allowing other women, not just in politics. We're talking about the private sector as well. In my case, when I run, I was 25 years old, and I was elected to district in Puerto Rico. And I ran against 6 men. So that was the first comment I got is, you can wait, let other men do the job, and when you are 40s or 50, then you run. Or you can't do it because you don't have the money to sponsor your career. And that's something that we always hear. I mean, every time a woman is running for something, somebody will say, let the men do it first. You should be doing other kind of things. So I believe in the Reagan motto of it can be done. So I would never allow nobody to try to diminish my self-esteem. So we need to sponsor a lot of women and girls, not just to run for political positions or careers, but as well in the private sector, in the sports, in every area. That's the reason I always give opportunities in internships in my office. I did it when I was in State House, and I am doing the same thing here in Congress. More than 95% of my interns are women. I think that gives them an opportunity to feel and work in an environment that can help them to grow.
We've got a few minutes left. We can open it up for questions. If you can just wait for a microphone to get to you and then identify yourself.
Excuse me. Good morning. My name is Mariana Sanchez. This question is for you, Congresswoman. Can you talk a little bit about the Puerto Rican population in Florida and how you see them being an influence in the 2020 election and where Florida is going to stand?
Thank you for that question. You may know that in Puerto Rico we are 3.1 million American citizens living there, but you got 5 million Puerto Ricans living in the States. So you got more Puerto Ricans living in the mainland, and that's because just one reason. We are U.S. territory, but we want to become a state. During 2017, and we got 97% of the people who voted for statehood in Puerto Rico. In 2012, it was 61%. So this is, I mean, we were part of Spain and for 500 years, and then since 1898, we've been part of the U.S. We are proud American citizens. We got more than 249,000 people serving in the military forces, coming just from Puerto Rico. So what's the main reason people moving from the island? It's not about the weather, I can tell you that. It's because we don't have the same opportunities back home. More than 47 federal laws do not apply to the island, and that just raised the poverty level line back home. 45% of the island is under the poverty level line. Even Mississippi, which can be described as a poor state, is less than 21. So that disparity and lack of access to equality, and that's what we're talking about. It's just equality, having the same resources and tools to improve our economy, to get things done. A lot of people are moving just because they got better pay job, better wages here in their jobs, attending healthcare issues that we, as the territories, all face problems with the healthcare. So that was the reason in the last election in Florida. I did mobilize myself and the leadership in Puerto Rico, and we supported Rick Scott. And he did a great job as a governor, and he was representing Puerto Ricans in that race to run for the Senate, and he won that election. So I think the participation of Puerto Ricans in the state of Florida that are always supporting, Puerto Rico to become a state has played a major role in the last election in Florida, not just for Governor DeSantis, which we sponsor and supported, but as well Rick Scott. So that means not just in Florida, in Texas, and New Jersey, New York, you will have a lot of Puerto Ricans be very active because we can vote in the island, but as soon as we take a plane and move to a state, we can't vote. And we have all the same rights. So that's something I'm going to be filing a bill to let Puerto Rico become the 51st state of the nation.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Olson. I'm with the Women's Democratic Club of Montgomery County, so I have kind of a bias, but I am a former Republican. And I'm going to ask this question because it's the only chance I'm ever going to get, I think, to ask Republicans in Congress face to face. Listening to all three of you, I think you are congressional members of integrity, of deep philosophical values, as you mentioned. You're ethical. You're smart. So, why in the world do you support somebody who has, at last count in the presidency, has told 9,000 lies, insults people, is not obviously interested in policy, and on and on and on and on? I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand why people like you can support somebody like him.
Okay, let him answer. Let him answer.
You want me to go first? Great. I will tell you first and foremost that I always respect the office. Just like I did with the previous presidents, I've been able to vote since 1968. I may not always agree on policy, personalities or philosophy, but I will always respect the office. It's the most powerful person in the world. As far as answering little snippets, I find the policy to be very beneficial. Our taxes are down, our employment is up, our unemployment is down. I can see from my state of West Virginia's perspective a lot of hope and promise, because we had a very difficult time under the last administration with the coal industry, and my particular district was decimated by that policy. So I am very hopeful and very happy with the policies that have been passed so far, and we have more years ahead of us to see where that leads.
Congresswoman Fox, you want to?
I'm happy to. I agree with Carol on what she has said. I'm very respectful of the office of the president. The president, no matter who it is, was elected by the people of the United States, and it is our responsibility to respect the position. So it's important that we do that. I might turn the question around on you and say, why would you ignore all of the wonderful things that have occurred in the past 2 years in this country in terms of the economy, the opportunity, and the positive things that are happening? I am so frustrated by people who totally ignore the good things that are happening in this country. Women are doing better than they've ever done before in the country in terms of unemployment, wages, opportunities. It's amazing, and yet people focus only on the kinds of things that you brought up and not the positive things. Again, I say, look at the policies. I completely agree with Carol. Look at what's happening. Don't look at what you're reading on the internet. And you know, when constituents write to me, no matter what party affiliation, and they say, I want you to tell the president this, I want you to tell him that, I write them back and say, here's the president's address. If you want him to have your message, you send it to him directly. I will give the president my messages, and I do, but you send him your messages directly. Don't ask me to pass them along, but we're in the greatest economy that we have had since the 60s. And we should celebrate that and say, what are the policies that are passing that are making this country do so well, and why don't we do more of those things and pay no attention to the static that is out there? That's what I do. I focus on the policy. Like Carol, I don't get out, scream and yell, try to draw attention to myself, but I try to make sure the right policies are being passed to help us be a better country.
Well, on that note, to be continued in 2020, please thank our panel, and I'll hand it back to Brittany.